To start our broadcast in our stream in a minute. Good afternoon, dear friends. You're welcome. Ukraine Media Center continues its work. We are supported by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine. We are hosted by Skyloft Hotel, and we'd like to thank them for that. And right now with us we have Vadym Boichenko online, City Mayor of the City of Mariupol. Vadym, hello. We all have been monitoring the situation with evacuation of civilians from Mariupol. What's the situation at the moment? The situation was and is very difficult because all our intentions we had since the very beginning of this war all our plans depend on those invaders who unfortunately announce evacuation every time and then block it. For example, today it was announced that there will be many buses. I would not even quote the numbers, but unfortunately it did not happen because there were just 7 buses, and of course we expected to have more, but those buses did not come. And also, in addition, they had to tell us clearly what would be the route, so that we would, that more people would board those buses on the way, and there should be much more. There should have been many more of those buses, but they did not plan it, and those buses only evacuated. There is the left bank part of our city, which is cut off the rest of the city, and it was very difficult to get there to start evacuation. But people reached that starting point, marked as starting point of that evacuation. But at that time, some combat action started. There was artillery shelling, and there were tanks attacking the defenders of our city. So the scared people had to make a decision for themselves whether they should go or not. And unfortunately, many people decided to stay in the city because they thought that it would be dangerous for their lives to leave. But still, 4 buses did leave, and by today, they spent a long time on the way. They spent a night in Berdyansk, and by today they reached another point on the map, which is Vasiliivka. And in that village of Vasiliivka, they now crossed into Ukrainian control territory, and now they're moving to Zaporizhia. We are very glad to hear it. Do we know how many people we managed to evacuate? All together over all this time in those difficult conditions, and I'd like to emphasize that now everything depends on our so-called liberators, but actually they're occupiers who have destroyed our city, and more than 100,000 people are captured by them. But since the 13th of March, when it became possible, when there was that first evacuation mission, we supported by the minister in charge, Irina Vereshchuk, and Pavlo Kyrylenko, the governor of our oblast, and by our president, Vladimir Zelensky, we all joined efforts towards this goal, and by now more than 100,000 people have already reached the territory controlled by the central government. Those 4 buses are not a lot. That's a small part of the mission that has already happened. These are 80 residents of Mariupol who have already arrived to the government-controlled part of Ukraine. But we are glad to see it. That means that we have saved 80 more of Mariupol residents. Vadym, today, we saw some statement that we expect for so-called humanitarian corridor to operate also today, if you can call it humanitarian corridor. Has it been operated? Do you have any information about that? I'll emphasize again that since the very first days of March, early March, there was this opportunity to start evacuation. Like there was a point on the map, you all heard about that evacuation. People would gather at those points, but then some shelling would start, our buses would be destroyed, and so residents of Mariupol were not able to leave. And so in that way, until the 10th of March, they destroyed all the buses owned by the city, and in that way they blocked evacuation from Mariupol. Now, unfortunately, something similar is happening. I have been seeing for a second day running that again we announced that there will be evacuation. We established the starting point, some point of the map of Mariupol. People gather there. Today, more than 200 residents of Mariupol have been waiting for this evacuation. They don't know whether it will happen or not. Somebody approached them and said that they will be treated personally, like only women with children will be entitled, then women without children and elder people. So there is some sort of priorities and that queue for evacuation. But now by 3:05, by this time, unfortunately, we don't see any buses in that point which we marked as a starting point. We expect that those troops will allow us to evacuate local residents of Mariupol. And we established this route. And it was said that we will be able to have more people to board the buses in Mangush and then near Berdyansk and then move to Zaporizhia. But at the moment, there are no buses at the starting point. We are waiting. We have asked for 22 buses who had to come at 2 p.m. and now we have 3:05 and there are no buses still. And people gathered there, people have been waiting, and unfortunately nothing is happening, but we are waiting. Mr. Boichenko, we know and we see it here that in Mangush they are somehow mocking our people, and people are registered for so-called filtration. Do you think the occupiers try to prevent people from living on the mass scale, or what is this procedure? Why they have introduced it? This procedure is about creating obstacles for evacuation to Ukraine. Through this more difficult procedure with this filtration. Like if you were related in any way to any civil service, to municipal service, you will be captured immediately, and some people are kept as prisoners for 2 weeks, some people are kept for 2 months. And like we clearly treat it as torture. Unfortunately, many residents of Mariupol have already become victims to this torture, to this sort of barbaric treatment. Not only males, but also women fall victims to it. And those people who pass through that crime, that filtration, they witness what they saw, and that's terrible. There is nothing humane in that. They said we are liberators, but we see it as a genocide, as a war crime. This is some sort of ghetto. They placed 4 centers, 4 hubs around the city, operating around the city. For example, I have a neighbor who has registered for this filtration, and his number is 3620. So there is a long waiting line for that filtration. And the neighbor says that, maybe he will go through the filtration with this speed. He will be able to go to a Ukraine-controlled part in December 24. This is about torture. This is about fascist methods. This is like methods used by fascist Germany back then and now by fascist Russia. Mr. Boichenko, could we ask you whether you confirm information which appeared earlier today on some media that near Mangush some mass graves have been found where occupiers bury bodies of our people brought from Mariupol. Unfortunately, I do confirm this information. I confirm it. We see, you and we see that for a second week running, the city has been closed and nobody is allowed into the city. And now they're trying to hide the traces of crime committed by the Russian Federation in the city of Mariupol. According to our estimates, and those are optimistic estimates, more than more than 10,000 local civilians died in the streets of our city because of enemy's artillery. And our directors of our utilities saw it personally. Directors of our municipal companies saw it, and unfortunately we see that dead bodies of those residents of Mariupol have started disappearing from the streets. And our residents provide us with information, but this is a very it is very dangerous to pass this information to us, but for us to disseminate this information. Because, it's about war crime, and the invaders try to hide those war crimes. They use three tools. First of all, those are mass graves. We were looking where it would start, and we see that it already started. Around Mangush, there is a circular road. And from the left side, there is a gas station, Oka gas station, petrol station, and next to that station there is an old cemetery and a field next to the cemetery. And in this field they are digging trenches, huge trenches, 30 meters long, and then bring those dead bodies of Mariupol residents there and throw them into those trenches. Sorry, the interpreter cannot hear, the sound dropped. Mr. Boichenko, we seem to have lost connection for a minute. Just a moment, we have been trying to restore the connection. Mr. Boichenko, can you hear us? Let's try and reconnect. Now you're with us. We managed to restore the connection. We can hear you. Yeah, there are problems with communications. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you now. Seems that the connection has been restored, but its quality is rather bad. Can you hear us, Mr. Boichenko? Let's try and reconnect. Dear colleagues, please try and reconnect to restore normal connection. And in the meantime, I will remind you that in our studio we have online connection with the head of the city of Mariupol. Vadym, you're welcome. So, please repeat your question. We lost connection when you were telling us about that cemetery and that the invaders are digging trenches there. Yes, there is a circular road around the town of Mangush. And on the left side there is Oka petrol station, and there is an old cemetery. And next to that cemetery there is a field. And in that field they're digging huge trenches 30 meters long, and they bring in big trucks dead bodies of our residents killed by Russian troops, and they're burying them there, hiding traces of their war crimes. And we asked Maxar to confirm it with their satellite images. I cannot but ask you, what sort of information we have from Azovstal steel factory? What's happening there? What about civilians hiding there? Unfortunately, today we cannot evacuate innocent civilian residents of Mariupol from Azovstal steel factory. You see, we ask for stable ceasefire. We need at least 1 day to be able to tell our residents who have been hiding there for 57 days Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah. So we need a stable ceasefire. Unfortunately, for 57 days, the city is bombed, and those places where residents are hiding are bombed. And we have all international parties involved. We ask for that ceasefire, for us to announce local residents, to establish the location, the point where we would start the evacuation, for us to be able to start that evacuation, and then we would start and evacuate local residents to the government-controlled part of Ukraine. We ask everybody. Yesterday, President Zelensky proposed, and other leaders of negotiations offered various exchanges and so on. But we have to understand that only the president of that criminal government, Vladimir Putin, believes he has the right to Mariupol. Thank you, Vadym, and I'd like to let journalists here in the studio ask their questions. Please introduce yourself and speak into the microphone.
I'm Rula Al-Khatib from Al Arabiya and Al Hadath News channel. We came from Dubai. I have a couple of questions for you. First, what's your first comment about what the Russians said, that they occupied whole Mariupol and are getting ready for a parade? This is the first question. The second question, how long do you think the Azov and the civilians can survive inside Azovstal after Putin announced that they'll put them under siege? What do they have inside to survive from food, electricity, water? And we would like to know the numbers, the exact numbers of civilians there and the Azov fighters. In addition, please, it was not clear for me, the number of the people in Mariupol who were evacuated till now, the number of the killed civilians, and the number of people who are still in Mariupol. Thank you.
I will start from your last question. As soon as the invasion started, it was still possible for people who decided to leave Mariupol. Some of them would live in their own cars, some of them would use trains, which were still moving until the time when the Russian troops destroyed this possibility. So for that time, since the beginning of the invasion, about 100,000 people left Mariupol, 100,000. Then the Russian troops captured the whole Mariupol. The whole Mariupol became like prisoners. We were waiting. We launched various missions about evacuation. But as soon as people would reach the first roadblock, the first checkpoint, we would be told by those invaders that we don't have any instruction for you to leave the city, so get back to the city. That's what they told the people. So on the 13th of March, when all our international partners joined efforts for one goal, for one end, for residents of Mariupol to be able to evacuate, but without ceasefire. At that time, on the 13th of March, I personally led that mission, but we did not get to the city of Mariupol to enable it. But they opened this opportunity, and now residents started leaving the city using their private cars. And by now, until today, the number of people who left Mariupol to government-controlled part of Ukraine is in excess of 100,000 people. Now around the city, in Berdyansk, in villages, there are 50,000 people who are waiting for evacuation. there are also people forcefully evacuated to Russian Federation through that filtering. It's actual deportation, and the number of people transported to Russian Federation or so-called Donetsk People's Republic is more than 40,000 residents of Mariupol. And in the city we now have more than 100,000 people. The city was and is and remains the Ukrainian city, because now our brave defenders, our heroes, our warriors are defending it as much as possible. They are defending our city. So, you know, whatever statements are made, the city is and will be Ukrainian city. But we still ask, you know, everybody, the international community should join efforts towards one goal. The local residents, which are under threat of elimination of killing there in Azovstal, they should leave. So we ask for a ceasefire, at least for one day, for us to be able to make announcements to those residents of Mariupol hiding in shelters in Azovstal, for them to leave to some place, and our warriors would also leave with their weapons. Now they are defending it, but you know that these are the only conditions upon which they are ready and we are ready. And now there have been negotiations running on various levels for it to happen. Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? You are welcome.
Mr. Mayor, it's Luke Harding here from The Guardian newspaper. The Russians seem to have their own new mayor of Mariupol. They seem to have got rid of you and replaced you with something else, with someone else. Can you speak to what the Russians do in areas they occupy in terms of creating political structures, replacing elected officials with their own people? What's happening in Mariupol, and what does this say about their methods in occupied areas?
Методи в них були і залишаються підслідними. Ми це робили з початку 2014 року. Підходимо до Я чую переклад.
Sorry. Their methods were and still are the same since the beginning of 2014. So those leaders who wanted to have so-called Donetsk People's Republic in Mariupol did not surrender in 2014, but I would like to remind you that for 2 months, again, Mariupol was occupied by so-called Donetsk People's Republic, but they did not surrender. And back then, those leaders of so-called Donetsk People's Republic, back then and now, they are the same people, that the same situation. So what they did? They used so-called opposition bloc for life political party. They used local elections. They brought their local leaders hiding within the ranks of that party. Before that, they were, under the previous mayor, they were in government positions. And unfortunately, I have to say that they were adjusting people, Russians' fire against infrastructural sites. And in that way, we have lost our electricity supply, we have lost our water supply, our heating supply, our natural gas supply, our food supply. They were shelling everything, and they were adjusting the Russian shelling. And they were also targeting that Russian fire on evacuation buses, which since the very first days of March until the 10th of March, they destroyed more than 100 buses which we wanted to use in evacuation. And it was done by so-called, by Mr. Kharmyshev and Mr. Boichenko from so-called opposition bloc for life party. They said that now they are the local authorities here. What they're doing now, the first thing they started doing is now, jointly with Russian occupational forces, they destroyed the evidence, destroyed the trace of their own war crimes. As we understand, they have been burying those dead bodies, and we know where they are burying those dead bodies to hide their war crimes. So those collaborators have now been helping Russian troops, the occupiers. Thank you. Any more questions? You're welcome.
Just one clarification on numbers. At the beginning, you said that 4 buses had left with 80 people. I'm assuming that's yesterday and not today. And to be clear on the number of civilians still in Mariupol, is it right to say there are about 1,000 civilians inside the steel factories still? And I think according to your figure, about 100,000 still in the city outside the steel factory. Have I got that correct?
100,000 local residents are staying in the occupied Mariupol. In Azovstal steel factory, it's difficult to calculate, it's difficult to count, but according to our estimates, there are 300 to 1,000 residents hiding there, 300 to 1,000. For us to be able to count them, we have to have a ceasefire, at least for one day, for us to see whether they are alive or not, for us to count, to calculate, to count how many of them are there, still there. Because unfortunately now there is still shelling, there is still bombing and all that, so it's impossible to count people, for you to understand. Now, in Mariupol, I am to emphasize, with the help of so-called leaders of that opposition bloc for life, who now became so-called local authorities, more than 20,000 residents have been killed in Mariupol. In the city itself, there are still 100,000 people remaining. Yesterday, unfortunately, it was announced that there would be many buses, that there would be wide-scale evacuation just before Easter, which is a great holiday. There would be a large-scale evacuation, there would be many buses, but there were just 7 buses arriving and just 4 buses reached the end point, and there were just 80 residents of Mariupol, but we thank even for those, because it means 80,000 lives rescued. Any more questions? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Boichenko. Thank you for finding time to join us on air. Thank you. Dear friends, I would like to remind you that you're welcome to monitor our announcements. We're developing our schedule for tomorrow. Stay with us. Thank you. Bye.